Hello and welcome to the FinanceSmartz Entrepreneurship Series. Here is our host, Arul Nigam.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the second episode of the FinanceSmartz Entrepreneurship Podcast. Today I'm delighted to be speaking with Miss Deborah Sawaf, an entrepreneur and the creative director and president of Thale Blanc. She has worked with eminent figures in the fashion industry, from Valentino to Roberto Cavalli, and lived around the world, from India to the Middle East to Italy to LA. Ms. Sawaf has also been an active philanthropist and is an expert in sustainable philanthropy. Welcome, Ms. Sawaf, and thank you so much for joining us. So I guess just to begin with, could you please explain your path to where you are today and what motivated you to become an entrepreneur?
I think the entrepreneur part of it was just automatic. I didn't actually study to be an entrepreneur. I studied to be a designer. And most creative people like to go out on their own. And my journey it's been a roller coaster ride where you have this, really tough uphill climb, and then you come down and you're screaming with joy until you pause, and then you have to climb back up again. And that has been a constant, and I think it's pretty much a constant for most entrepreneurs. At least that's the way it's been for me. And I'm really happy where I am today. I love what I do. I think passion, resilience, persistence, those are, the really important key words for an entrepreneur to know. That's just part and parcel of the package.
Right. And so on that topic of the ups and downs that you mentioned and having resilience, could you just talk about some of your biggest challenges and the obstacles you faced early on, especially as someone whose main goal wasn't necessarily entrepreneurship, and how did you overcome them? And early on in your career, what did you learn from that, and how did that influence you going forward to where you are today?
Well, I think one of the biggest I was born in India. My mom's English, my father's from India, and I lived in the Middle East for about 12 years before I actually moved to the United States. So I started my career mostly in the Middle East, and by the time I moved to the United States, I just thought I could pick up and start over again. And I think the biggest challenge was learning the terrain and getting to know the people. And I should have made an effort to do that before I actually launched my business, because I didn't study in the United States, I didn't work here, and I didn't take the time to understand the terrain. I just, it was my first time starting out on my own in a completely new country. I'd lived in the Middle East for several years before I started my business, so people knew who I was. I had an awareness of the culture. I had an awareness of, the marketing, and it's much smaller as well. When I came to the United States, I took a big leap, and because it looked promising, it seems all rosy, but I ended up starting my business because the product was 100% or is 100% Italian. I ended up starting out in Italy. And when we moved back to the States from Italy in 2016, that was the toughest part of business for me.
So that actually sounds like two very big leaps, not only the adjusting to a new country and new culture, but also the involvement or the initiation of your entrepreneurial journey. So I'm sure there was a lot of probably fear or hesitation at the beginning. So how did you manage that and overcome that? Because I know not necessarily everyone is crossing borders when they begin their journey, but obviously there's a lot of fear involved when you're taking a huge risk at the beginning. So how did you deal with that and manage that and grow from it?
Well, when you're creative, there's, the creative mind, and then there's the business mind. I am the creative mind, and I grew to understand the business. So I should have actually done an MBA before I started my business. So I would have had a different approach. But I was really excited. It was new territory. It was huge. Italy, received us so well. So I thought when I was back home in California that I would get the same response. And while we worked by coastal Italy and the United States, I spent much more time in Italy. Our marketing was mostly Italian, even though we had PR companies here. We did not really have a presence, but I did not understand the market. I did not understand the consumer. I didn't know what their taste was. And we are a very global product. I didn't do what most people do today, is pay attention to visibility online. So we were very slow there, and that hurt us eventually in a big way. So I think those are things, which is one of the reasons why I actually am so keen to talk to entrepreneurs, because as an entrepreneur, you're really excited to get out and do your thing and launch it. But when I listen to some of the presentations that kids make for their ideas, they see only part of it. They haven't seen the 360 degrees that it takes to actually accomplish where you want to be. And, that to me is an understanding that we all need to have before we get really excited about going out into the market with a product or with a project.
So that actually makes a lot of sense. And it's sort of within that, there is something else I wanted to ask you about. I guess whatever industry you're in, as an entrepreneur, you have to deal with the daily challenges of the business, but also maintaining creativity in whatever space you're in, whether it's fashion or tech or something else. So what is that like, and what advice do you have for like the young people that you mentioned for learning to maintain that balance between those two things? Especially early on?
Well, if you're a creative mind, I think you have to make sure you have the right partners that have the skills you need to run your business, but definitely not the same skills as you do. So you need to make sure your team is really well-rounded. And we think that we can wear all hats and we can do everything because we think we have an understanding of the business, we have an understanding of the consumer. But until you've actually tested something, you really don't know. So you take a period of time to test. And at the same time, I think you need to, I can only talk from a completely creative aspect, but had I had a partner who understood the fashion business, who understood PR and marketing, all of which you tend to ignore. So growing the business, I am fortunate that I can create a collection really quickly. But if I didn't have that ability to do, one of the things in the business would have suffered. And you still lag behind in a big way. So you stop being as creative as you actually want to be because you're really trying to grow your business. So the team is really important.
Okay, I see. So you, since there's so many diverse responsibilities that are that you have to address, the team is really important for maintaining that balance.
Absolutely. No man is an island. You can't do something all by yourself. You do need to make sure that you have people that complement your idea or your skills. And there's a lot of different aspects to the business that we don't really pay attention to. Like when someone makes a presentation, they have a great idea, they're going to go out and market it. And you don't realize how, you've got to be out there in the market, getting the feedback, get your feedback from the people who are your potential customers, and not testing a really small community. I started out with a really small section of society, and it took me a while. It takes you much longer to understand what the bigger marketplace needs.
That makes sense. And so how do you, just one more thing on this topic, how do you incorporate that, I guess basically market research that you're mentioning with your creative process? Because obviously you, especially in your industry, I guess there's an element of artisticness to it, but also obviously you have to be responsive to your customers and your market. So how do you, what is that like, and how do you incorporate that into your own creative process?
Well, as a designer, I like to say to designers, don't let people change who you are or change your aesthetic, because you don't want to look like everybody else. You want to be unique for who you are. So make sure your product is unique to you and speaks you. So people, when they look at it, they have to say, that's a Deborah Sawaf. Or when I look at this, I know this is one of her creations. So you've got to be able to identify with your product. And I'm talking purely from a fashion perspective. However, when you're out in the market, people are going to say to you, oh, I'd like it in a different kind of fabric. Or how about if we do it, slightly longer, slightly shorter, or a little more of this or a little more of that. You've got to take into consideration things that really matter and are actually going to sell your product on in a bigger picture, but stay true to yourself. That's the most important thing, is your product needs to speak about you.
Okay, so you need to adjust to your market, but without losing your own creative touch and your distinctive.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So now I'd like to move on to a slightly different topic. So you've mentioned how your business and your background has given you a platform for advocating for the empowerment of women and for children. So could you just talk a little bit about a little bit more about what you do there and how your background in entrepreneurship has aided you with that?
I have to break it up into different parts. So I was born in India, and as you know, it's a developing country, and we've seen the worst of poverty if you've actually lived and grown up in India. And I was surrounded by people that were always involved in philanthropy. Some of my closest friends that I have to say that really steered me in that direction, which has added a lot of value to my life. So when I moved to the States, I knew that I wanted to do something to change lives. And I was married and I was going to have kids, but even before I had kids, my father always said it takes every drop to fill the ocean. So it doesn't matter about how big the impact is. It's the fact that everyone tries to do their bit and create the impact or work towards something. So when I got married and I was going to have kids, I wanted to create a program to teach kids philanthropy. The important part of that is I studied psychology, so I realized that the best time to teach kids philanthropy was between the ages of 7 and 12, and they're most impressionable at that age. And I think you can teach them, and you have to teach them the gratification of giving. If they don't understand what they're contributing towards, and they don't feel the emotion given back from their contribution, it's like giving away things you don't need. And with our family, you don't give away things you don't need. If you want to give away something, if you're going to call it charity, it's got to be a sacrifice. If you don't miss it, it's not charity, it's something you don't want. And so with my kids, they gave up presents at the age of 7 and picked a cause, and whatever it was, whether it was pediatric cancer research or education for underprivileged kids, they had to give something up, but they had to give it up completely. It was not like I can give up a little bit and have a little bit. It was all or nothing, and there was no problem if they didn't want to do it at all. So it was a test with my kids for the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, where we started a program called Kids for Kids with Cancer. And the kids would go out into the farmers market, and very organically and grassroots, it was a grassroots effort for them to sell the French crepes at the farmers market. And all the proceeds from that would go to the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. And I found that every time the kids would run out into the streets and invite people to come in and buy a crepe, a French crepe. And every time they were able to get somebody to spend that $5 or $10, it gave them a sense of gratification. It gave them a sense of fulfillment. It's like they made it happen. They changed something for somebody else. And that worked beautifully. And, we started it as as a program, and we did it regularly. And as my kids grew, we decided that they were going into college, and we realized that there were a lot of kids that were incredibly smart and didn't have the means to be able to go to college. And we wanted to do, as a family, do something different, and realize to us that education is the best gift you can give someone. It changes, generations. You educate one person, you educate generations to come, because a mother will make sure her kids are educated, and so on. Under the umbrella of the brand, we started what you see as the Happy Project. So everything with the happy quote on it, which reads, "I have a reason to be happy, and the reason is you." Anything with the happy message on it goes towards education for underprivileged kids. I think what I wanted to teach my kids from this, and what I wanted young people to learn from this, is you don't have to wait until you've made your first million or got your first check to give back. You can give back a very small amount every day. If you start a business, give back 5 cents to the dollar, or 5 cents to $10, and it just adds up. And I think if you think about it, you don't feel like you're giving away so much when you have to write a check for, $500, and you want to do something and you want to create an impact. But if you're giving back daily, and if you set the example, I think you're an entrepreneur, you're starting your own company. If they know that you're doing this, maybe your employees would want to do it. And it's a nice way to make it, the essence of the brand in some ways.
I think that's an amazing mission, and I really appreciate what you're doing, and everything that your business has also been involved with. So I just want to ask you about the next step, I guess. So once you instill those values in someone, if there's someone who's interested in giving back, and perhaps wants to create a nonprofit organization or some sort of charitable group, how can they do that in a sustainable way? Because I know you've talked about the dangers of just wanting to give back but not applying an entrepreneurial mindset, which will obviously preclude you from maintaining that in the long term. So how do you approach this sustainably? So
when you're talking about starting a foundation, it's rather complicated, and the best way to do it is, like I said in the beginning, every business needs a team. So it's bringing on the right people. You have a very kind heart, and therefore you're thinking about others, and you want to do something charitable. But even to do something charitable, it's a business. You have to employ people, you have to pay people, because there's only this long people are going to work for you and understand that you're charitable, but everyone needs to make money and, put the food on the table, so to speak. So I think you have to think about starting a foundation or giving back as a business as well. I'm privileged, and I was fortunate, and I'm able to give from what we make. But had I to start my foundation and had to grow, I won't call it our foundation, because we don't really take any money directly. All the money goes directly to the causes that we work with. But if you have to do that as an individual, you're going to have to pay for your time, for your travel, for the people that work for you. And, if that isn't sustainable and you can't keep going, you're going to have to drop it and get a real job to support your philanthropy.
That makes sense. And so obviously between charity and an actual business, there's a difference in for-profit versus non-profit. But besides that, would you say there are any major differences in how you'd approach it? Because based on what you're saying, it sounds like they're actually very similar. Because if you run, obviously it's not for-profit, but if you run it with the same skills of running a business, that's how you prepare for the longer term and ensure that you can continue giving back for a long time.
For non-profit businesses, there are so many organizations out there that will support you. It's how you pitch what you're doing, and those become your partners. They become the team that surrounds you. So if you can bring on the right partners and get the right funding, and especially at somewhere almost all universities have programs for especially not-for-profit organizations. So it's finding the right partners to work with you.
I see. And so just going back to the idea of teams, obviously the specific will vary from industry to industry, but what do you look for in your teammates for your business or for your charitable endeavors?
I think what's really important to me is, first, I need to vibe, and there has to be some kind of synergy between the two people working together. You need people that are driven. You need people that aren't, that are focused and are looking at long term. Especially as an entrepreneur, you don't want to keep hiring and changing staff. So make sure they understand your vision and make sure they're willing to go with you, because it's a struggle. It's not an easy life. Some people start out great, but how many of the entrepreneurs do we actually know personally that have been successful as soon as they get out the door or as soon as they leave college? It's not really it's not an easy path. So make sure your team understands that. Make sure they share your vision and they understand either your product or your your whatever it is. They are, if it's technology, they are tech savvy, and hiring the people that have the skills that you lack.
Okay, so it's making sure your team shares your vision, and also everyone brings a new critical skill to the table.
Yes, and you have to be able to you have to agree to disagree.
I see. That makes sense. And so I know you were just talking about the successes and failures of new entrepreneurs. So could you just share what you think the biggest lesson or most important piece of advice you wish you could go back and give yourself when you were just starting out as an entrepreneur?
I do wish, and I often say that, some people say I have a PhD in fashion business just from running my own business for so long, but I wish I had understood the business side of fashion before I actually dove into fashion. So it's really important, and I like to say to creative people that get out of high school and go straight into fashion, understand the other sides of it. And I think, taking the time to study business is not a bad thing. You might lose a few years, but it works to your advantage.
Okay, so your biggest piece of advice would be making sure you have a solid foundation in the actual technicals of like the business side.
Absolutely. And also, from my personal experience, understanding the terrain, understanding the market, studying it. And even if you're incredibly good at what you do, you have to make sure people know that you're good at what you do. And how do they know that you're good at what you do is by really, gaining visibility. And everything today is online, and there are so many ways to do it, but everybody's online. So how do you beat that as an entrepreneur? How do you beat the big people that have all the funds to be able to go out online and spend millions on ads or ad spend or whatever it is that, on Google search and all of that, when you start out as an entrepreneur with a small budget, unless you're funded. But that's where I like to say, find your partners, as creative people, look for your partners in technology. That's really helpful as well.
I see. Okay. And so just a final question. I guess maybe this sort of flows from like the idea of the team, because I know you've mentioned that a lot, but what would you say is the most important lesson that you have personally learned on your entrepreneurial journey?
I think it's relationships. You meet several people along the way. Never get disappointed by someone saying no, because you learn from that. There's something to be learned from either every rejection or every failure. Every failure is a lesson. stay open-minded, and I am really open-minded, and I'm always willing to listen to what people have to say, but also staying focused and going after what matters most. I think it's the focus, to me, that is the most important thing for an entrepreneur. Is we tend to figure out, because we're creative, this is what's working and this is not what this isn't. So instead of taking the time to figure out why something isn't working, we jump to something else. And that's normal and human tendency, because you want to move really quickly and you think by changing what you're doing is going to work right away, but understand why it didn't work in the first place. So focus is the most important thing for an entrepreneur. And your vision, and staying true to your vision.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's like, those are the also like the common threads like throughout that. Basically, like the importance of maintaining your relationships and having the right people on your side, having the at least somewhere on your team having the technical expertise for everything that in your space, and then finally understanding the terrain and the market that you're working in. Well, thank you so much. That was really helpful. I know I got a lot from that, and I'm sure everyone is going to learn a lot. So thank you so much for all of your time.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.